just ahead, there's another edition of the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And I'm political analyst Al Spry. So happy to be on Tough TV 38 in Orlando, Reagan.
And we'll tell you more about that in a minute or two. Our special guest today, former Senator Byron Dorgan, a Democrat from North Dakota, former chairman of the Energy Committee. He has lots to say about that, and he's got a brand new novel out that will scare the wits out of you called Gridlock.
I'm scared already.
Put an ear on the radio. Pull up a chair. The Florida Roundtable begins following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith, Public Affairs Director of the Florida News Network.
And political analyst Al Spry. Great to be with you again, Reagan, as always.
Always a pleasure to share these quarters with you, sir. And we want to pass along, remind folks that we are now, and this could be scary, you can see us on TV.
Yes, I shaved extra close today, Reagan. My hair is coiffed, and I am ready. You can watch us on TV on Saturdays at 9 a.m., Tough TV 38 in Orlando. Listeners can receive Tough TV 38 over the air with an antenna in select apartment complexes here in Orlando and in mobile home parks in Central Florida. There's also a YouTube feed, which I am publicizing on my Facebook page. Go to Facebook, look up Al Spry, and you'll find me there. Also carried on Channel 69 on the Summit Broadcast Cable TV system. And if you can't receive the programming of Tough TV, just ask your cable system or satellite provider to carry Tough TV 38 today.
There you go. All right. Now, having said that, we want to talk about our website, myflanews.com.
Yes, it's Announcement City here today. We have if you also on TV. And then, of course, if you want to listen to archived Florida Roundtable shows, go to myflanews.com, myflanews.com. Get up to date with all the latest news that is affecting you, the state, the nation, internationally, and all that good stuff.
Mm-hmm. All right. But do it after you finish listening to today's show.
And watching.
That's right, and watching. All right. Well, lots on your mind this morning today, Al. Let's have at a couple of things here.
Now, do you remember Dr. Terry Jones? Where he got his doctorate, I don't know. But he is he's that preacher. Remember the preacher who likes to burn Korans?
Yes, yeah. Up in this little town near Gainesville.
Yes, however, he moved, or maybe he decided to leave town because he was afraid. But he sold his property.
Okay.
He is going to have a Koran burning party. Again. I guess that's what you would call it.
I don't remember that he ever actually went through with the first one. He threatened.
Well, according to him, according to this article, he has burned 3,000 Korans every September 11th since 2010. He's made a big Koran bonfire.
Okay.
Now, the first quote that comes to my mind, Reagan, is one you're familiar with, being a history guy that you are. Heinrich Heine. The quote is, where they have burned books, they will end in burning human beings. I'm in no fan, of course, of burning any books, especially religious books. Yeah. I think that anyone is a complete idiot and a fool. Wow. So that's how I would characterize Terry Jones. Terry Jones is a highly disturbed individual. Now, the reason why I'm bringing him up is he moved to a town called Mulberry. Or he's associated with this town. I don't know if he actually is living there, but
and that again is up in the Gainesville area still.
Mulberry is a town west of. Actually, it's a little south. I looked it up because I couldn't find it. Because I'm like, what's Mulberry? Mulberry has 3,800 residents. It's west of Bartow and it's east of Tampa. So it's actually a little south of Gainesville. It's kind of Auburndale-ish, but south. And the Mulberrians. They don't want Terry Jones there. The quote is, why would you come to Mulberry that is peaceful and diverse? We like it that way. And why come to our town and stir up the pot of hate and division? There is a group called, it's a small group of residents in Mulberry. They do not want Terry Jones there. The group is called Not in Mulberry. Its members created a Facebook page called Not in Mulberry, Dr. Terry Jones. And then Terry Jones responds with, quote, "We did not choose Mulberry. Mulberry chose us. A supporter of mine who lives in Mulberry knew I needed a new spot to burn the books this year because I sold my property in Gainesville where we had been burning the books the last couple years. He called me and offered his property for the burning to raise awareness." Raise awareness of what, Dr. Jones? Raise awareness of how much of a fool, an idiot, and moron you are? Well, Reagan, your thoughts?
It's coming back to me. Mulberry, as I recall, it's been several years, but I've been through there. And as I recall, there is mining that goes in the Mulberry area. And it's a small town. He might be getting himself into a little bit more than he knows in a community of that sort, you know?
Well, all I know is I just wish he would go away because he gives Florida a black eye.
Well, he could move to Lower Alabama or Mississippi or someplace and see how they deal with him. You know, I think you're right. He's giving Florida a black eye.
I think he should move somewhere else. He's a very hateful man, and a very ignorant man.
Yeah. Well, all right. Let us pause along the network line. We'll remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We will be joined by former United States Senator Byron Dorgan as our conversation continues. We are back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And Al, as promised, we are off to the Washington, D.C. area, where we are joined by former Democratic Senator Byron Dorgan, North Dakota congressman, senator for 30-some years. He retired from the Congress in January 2011, chairman of the Senate committees and subcommittees for energy, aviation, appropriations, Indian affairs. Wow, Senator Dorgan, welcome to the Florida Roundtable.
Well, thank you very much. It's good to be with you this morning. And I should just mention to you that during my service in the Senate, at one point, my desk was right next to the desk of Bob Graham, the senator from Florida.
Aha. Bob has been a good friend to this program for many, many years. I first met him when he was the governor of this state. So, but I think we're dating ourselves.
I think so. Wonderful guy.
Yes, he is. Well, Senator, anything I left out there? Maybe you want to add a little bit about what are you doing in your retirement?
Well, let me just mention to you that public service was a real gift for me. It was a great privilege of my life to serve in the Congress, in the House and the Senate for many, many years. But I wanted to do other things. It's very hard to become a U.S. Senator. It's very hard to get there. And I should tell you, it's very hard to leave as well. But I wanted to have time to do other things in my life. And so I'm writing books. I'm teaching at a university, and I'm at a think tank, a senior fellow at a think tank. I run a nonprofit dealing with Native American youths, American Indian children, that I started, and I'm on a couple of boards of directors. So I'm quite busy, but I'm really enjoying life.
You have to call the house to find out if you're home.
That's true.
Well, the occasion of our visit today is a brand new book that you have out called Gridlock from our friends at Forge Publishing. It is a novel. I guess my first question would have to be, why this book and why now?
Well, and by the way, the gridlock doesn't apply to the Congress in terms of the subject of this book. It
and
in every other way.
It's funny that you said that, Senator, because that's the very first thing that I thought of when I saw the title.
Well, it applies to the Congress. If you're in Congress now and you are nourished by accomplishment, you are starving because there's not much accomplishment there. Well, listen, the book Gridlock is it's a cyber terror thriller. It's unfortunately sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and this book is about some terrorists, in this case from Iran, who decide to shut down the American electric power grid using computer viruses. And as you know, the National Science Foundation has studied the vulnerability of our power grid, and there's a lot of concern about cyber terror. Leon Panetta, the former Secretary of Defense, when he retired, said the next Pearl Harbor may very likely be a cyber terror attack. and I think that's likely the case. This book is a real thriller, by the way. It's a page-turner that'll, I hope you'll be able to sleep after you read it, but nonetheless, I'm proud of the book, and it really does address, through fiction, something that could unfortunately be very real unless we as a country are doing what we need to do to protect ourselves.
I want to tell you right up front, you're absolutely right. When I got the book, I sat down and read it, and I did half of the book in 2 sittings. It rolls along and you can't put it down. Al?
And of course, if you're wondering what the Florida connection is, your co-author, David Hagberg, is a Floridian, yes?
That's correct. David and I, this is our second book together. It's my 4th book. I wrote the first 2 myself, and then the publisher asked if I would be interested in a co-authorship. And so David and I have worked together. He's a marvelous writer. I had not previously written fiction. I'm learning a lot from David, but I've previously, as I said, written 2 books. But David's from Sarasota, Florida, a very good writer and a rapt imagination, as you can imagine if you've read the book. And so we really enjoyed putting this plot together and developing a book that many now say is, potentially a very real vulnerability and a real problem for this country.
When did you first become aware of this issue? It has been bantered about a bit about the infrastructure being vulnerable, but you hear about it, then you don't hear about it for a while. When did you first start thinking about that?
Well, as you know, in Congress, I just retired a couple of years ago, so I've been in a lot of top-secret briefings over a long, long period of time. There's nothing in this book that discloses anything I shouldn't have disclosed, but I've known and we've known that in this new digital age, which is quite wonderful for all of us with the Internet and everything, in the new digital age, there are also very new dangers to our country, because a war in which the weapon is digital, shutting down our electric grid or our water distribution system or our transportation system, that would be weapons that don't explode, but in some cases even more devastating to our country. Shutting down the electric grid, particularly if it happened over any lengthy period of time, would totally wreck the American economy and put a lot of lives at risk as well.
And the honesty of this book. Now, it's set in North Dakota, and I kind of guess there's a little bit of personal interest in that. But the scary part is it could really happen. And the way you describe this and the way it's laid out is, in fact, the way our electrical grid works in this country.
That's right. Actually, part of the theme of this book relates to a top-secret government facility, very much like Los Alamos, located in a remote part of New Mexico. This facility was located in a remote part of North Dakota, deep in the Badlands, but a top-secret government facility. But the plot here stretches from the Russians to the Iranians to Venezuelans to the Secret Service. The intelligence services of those countries, and to a drug-addled hacker in Amsterdam that the Iranians employ to shut down city by city, shut down power in the United States. And our book describes, what happens in those circumstances. And it has some rich, great characters that I think people will really enjoy.
One of your reviews here is by U.S. Energy Secretary Bill Richardson, former governor of New Mexico, saying that the book hits the bullseye on our energy challenge, how to end our addiction to foreign oil by finding new ways to produce energy here at home while at the same time protecting our environment. That's an interesting piece. We're always looking, I guess, ahead post-oil. What do you see as the challenges that we're facing and how to meet those challenges? Obviously, there are things on the table. There's natural gas, but of course that's been controversial lately with the fracking issue.
Right.
There's also the wind turbines and windmills in the Midwest to be put in the East Coast over the ocean there, and also solar, which is getting more and more technically advanced. How do you see this all playing out?
Well, one of the interesting things about our energy picture is that we are now producing more oil and more natural gas, and not just a little bit, but a lot more. And no one expected that. No one predicted that. In my home state of North Dakota, where the Bakken, it's called the Bakken play, is the most significant oil play on the entire planet at the moment. It's getting oil from shale deposits 10,000 feet under the ground. No one predicted that would be the case. But some now believe, because we have this additional oil and gas production and we're reducing the dependence we have on foreign oil. It's still around 40%, but it was 60%. They think, well, okay, so that's game, set, match. We don't have to do anything. But the fact is we've got to have a lower carbon future, so we have to have more clean energy and more renewable energy. And so we're going to continue as a country, it seems to me, to push very hard for, yes, oil and gas is helpful, but we need to find clean ways to use it. But we also need renewable and clean energy, wind, solar, geothermal, and more.
What as a follow-up?
And then let me just mention one other thing. This book is about the electric grid system. Mm-hmm. When we produce, often the sun shines and the wind blows in areas where there's not a lot of population. So you need to put it on a transmission wire to move it someplace. And our grid system, this electric transmission grid system, is not essentially modern. It's vulnerable. We didn't build an interstate highway of transmission like we did for cars. And so that comes back to the vulnerability of hackers and terrorists and bad people potentially shutting down the American electric power system.
Sure. And as one quick follow-up on that, everyone recently is touting natural gas as this panacea, but we're seeing issues of the fracking. What's your opinion on fracking? What do you think? What do you think about that issue?
Well, first of all, we've done what is called hydraulic fracturing for 50 years in this country. So it's not as if it's something brand new, but we've never done it the way it's being done with respect to shale deposits. Mm-hmm. If it is done with best practices, proper well boring, and good oversight and regulation, then it's fine. If you have some bad companies out there not doing proper well bore construction and so on, then you can have some real problems. So there has to be effective regulatory oversight of hydraulic fracturing. I think everybody understands that. If done that way, I think it is not harmful.
I want to go back. The size of the grid, and you talk about the transmission lines, and literally hundreds of thousands. It is so big, it would be virtually impossible to guard it.
Well, here's the deal. We've got about 200,000 miles of transmission lines, electric lines, and we've got 3,500 or so power producers. We've got transformers that step up the power and step down the power. There are tens of thousands of those, most of them on average 40 years old, most of them made overseas. And we have 3 interconnects in our transmission system. I think we have 127 individual control centers. All of it is highly computerized. But there's great concern about the introduction of webs and worms and various things that could shut down the system. And so there has to be a lot of effort in this country to protect it. You remember, there was this little problem in Ohio at a rural area in the electric grid system in Ohio, it was 10 years ago actually, and in an instant 55 million people lost their power. Well, if we would have the shutdown of electric power in our country for any significant length of time, it would be a devastating thing.
How is it we have managed now, the Ohio incident that rolled out and affected millions is several years behind us now. Is it just been luck that it hasn't happened again, or have we actually made some good steps in avoiding that kind of thing?
Well, both probably, but we haven't done what we need to do to make our electric grid system and the ability to distribute power and move power to people around the country as robust and as protected as it should be. And so we need to do more. One of the stimuluses that had David and I write this book was there was an article in the Wall Street Journal a number of years ago that said, they did a news article about the persistent rumor that's always existed in recent years about either the Russians or the Chinese having implanted a virus into our electric grid system. Not that they want to shut it down now, they wouldn't want to wreck the economy now, but if ever we were in a real terrific adversarial situation, they would have something very important as a weapon to use. And so the Wall Street Journal did this article about this persistent rumor. Well, no one ever answered the question, is it true or is it not true? But it raises the question about the ability to, given this new digital age, the ability to shut down something as essential as electric power service to much of the country. If that is possible, and many of us believe it is, excuse me, and so does the National Science Foundation. That's a real problem.
We are chatting with Senator Byron Dorgan about his brand new book, Gridlock, co-authored by David Hagberg from Sarasota. It is a novel, but it'll make you nervous because it could so easily come to pass. All the things in here are possible. We'll pause along the network line. Let us remind you that this is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
And our conversation with Senator Dorgan regarding Gridlock from our friends at Forge Publishing continues following these messages. From Pensacola to Key West and all points in between, you're listening to the Florida Roundtable, a service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest is former Senator Byron L. Dorgan, Democrat of North Dakota. He is the author of a brand new novel entitled Gridlock, co-authored by David Hagberg, who happens to live in the Sarasota area right here in Florida. It is indeed a thriller, and the point of the whole thing is that it too easily could happen this afternoon, tonight, tomorrow.
Let's not jinx ourselves, Reagan.
Well, no,
my goodness.
I certainly don't mean to do that.
I'm getting afraid now. My goodness.
It is a distinct possibility. Senator, I wanted to ask you about this because, of course, two of the players in this book, one has died and the other is no longer in office, or I presume not without influence, however. And we're talking about the leadership of Venezuela and Iran, two countries that really have no use for us. At least their leadership doesn't, or appears not to. Hugo Chavez, how big of a threat was he? You were still in office when he was there. What kind of man is this? How big of a threat was he to us? And could another one like that come along in Venezuela?
Well, Chavez was trouble on the international scene for us, obviously. I don't know what kind of a threat he was so much, but, our book has him conspiring, and his intelligence service conspiring with Ahmadinejad in Iran, rather. We could have used different names, of course, but it actually kind of worked that both of them were sort of rogues from rogue nations, and it is pretty believable, but that both would want to do damage to our country. And it's interesting, since the book, of course, President Chavez has died, and Ahmadinejad he reached term limits, and he's been replaced.
What do you see as the status of Venezuela now with Maduro in office now?
Doesn't look like there's much change, but we'll have to see. I mean, things, different people govern differently, so we'll see what the future brings. My hope is it might be a more constructive government with more freedom for the Venezuelan people and less trouble for the United States, but we'll see.
Now, of course, you would just, as Reagan just alluded to about Iran, but we're looking at a big mess in Egypt, and Egypt possibly turning into another Iran. I'm seeing shades of 1979. Are you?
All of us are very troubled by Egypt. We don't know where this ends up. The so-called Arab Spring it turns out to be a very long season. And I don't know. It's interesting. We have discovered that democracy sometimes produces results that we don't like. I mean, the Hamas, for example, wins election. The Muslim Brotherhood wins election in so-called free elections. So I don't know what's going to happen in Egypt. But obviously, my prayers and thoughts, as I think the prayers and thoughts of most Americans, with those people in Egypt who are losing their lives.
Absolutely.
During this troubled time. And I also, just maybe a year before the former president Mubarak left office or was removed from office, I was in Cairo and had lunch with Mr. Mubarak, with President Mubarak. I had met him before. He was an abiding friend of our country, no question about that. He was very helpful to the United States in the situation with Israel and creating some stability in the region. But it came at a very substantial cost to the Egyptian people because they didn't have the kind of freedom they want and deserve. So who knows? My hope is this gets resolved and gets resolved with less loss of life than now seems to be the case.
Yes, and, I wanted to also turn domestically for a moment. We're hearing a lot about the NSA recently. The NSA, of course, charged originally, created by President Truman, charged with, as an outgrowth of that, of infrastructure creation back in the early 50s. And it was supposed to be for spying on Russia and other satellites. Mm-hmm. So, and now it looks like the NSA, maybe they're a little bored because Russia is not communist anymore. Maybe they're turning their eyes on the American people. We've created this very large infrastructure. We're hearing all about it in the news because of Edward Snowden's revelations. And I wanted to get you, number one, I wanted to find out because Congress was saying, yes, we've been briefed on this the whole time, and I wanted to see if you were briefed, if you were ever briefed on it. And the second question is, how does this relate to the Fourth Amendment in your opinion? To me, it looks like an absolute disaster for the Fourth Amendment, but I wanted to get your input on that.
I was not briefed about it while in the Senate, and I was not on the Intelligence Committee, but I think there has been less oversight than there should be. And let me just say I'm of two minds with this issue about Snowden and the NSA issue. Number one, I don't think Snowden is no hero in my judgment. In the larger sense, I think what he has done has injured this country. But having said that, let me also be quick to point out that the discussion that has now ensued is a discussion the American people ought to have very aggressively with their government. Who's collecting information, for what purpose, information on whom? Those are issues that are very important, and the American people need to have hard, tough discussions with their government about those issues. And so the thing that's coming from this discussion that's obvious to me is these agencies have not been as regulated as they should be. There is not appropriate oversight, and we need to be very careful about these things.
Did they overstep their bounds, in your opinion?
Oh, I think so. I think the reports that we're now hearing, which, by the way, seemed not to have been disclosed in the first instances to those that should have been receiving that information, the reports suggest that there has not been careful oversight.
I want to shift just a little bit because you were the chairman of the Energy Committee and subcommittees during your time in the Senate. And historically, I'm thinking back across the years, we first started hearing about this crisis business during as far back as the Nixon years, and all of the succeeding presidents said, "I'm going to be the energy president. We're going to solve this problem." I remember during the Carter years being in graduate school and going to the gas station at 6 o'clock in the morning, and the lines were across the driveway, out in the street, around the block. And by the time you got to the gas pump, they'd say, "Sorry, we're out for today," or it's 10 o'clock in the morning, we're closed. So all of them have said they're going to solve the energy problem. And just a few minutes ago, you told us we're still getting 40% of our oil by import. What's up? How do you see it?
But that 40% is down from 60% just a few years ago, and is going lower. And it's interesting, if you go back a decade or 2 decades or 3, we were using more and producing less. Now we're producing more and using less. In fact, one of the great stories that no one has really been telling is about efficiency, whether it's CAFE standards for automobiles or the amount of electricity your refrigerator uses, your stove. The fact is, efficiency has been an unbelievable contributor to this country, energy efficiency. And so we are actually producing more and using less now. The key, though, is not just to celebrate these oil and gas discoveries, but also to continue working very hard on wind and solar and geothermal and the other renewable and clean energies.
I was going to say that I totally agree with you there. And with the technology moving as quickly as it is, we're going to see even more efficient appliances, more efficient vehicles, and of course, what's your opinion of the new electric hybrid vehicles and electric vehicles, the Volt, the Tesla vehicles? What do you think about those?
I think our future is destined to be more towards electric vehicles and hybrids. 90% of the fuel used in transportation is oil. 70% of the oil that's used in America is used in transportation. And so if you're going to address these oil issues and imports of oil, you've got to deal with the issue of transportation fuel. Clearly, I think we're going to head towards more electric vehicles, more hybrid vehicles, and hopefully hydrogen fuel cell vehicles in the future.
Senator, on that note, let us pause again along the network line. We'll remind folks that they are listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest this day is former Senator Byron L. Dorgan. He's a Democrat from North Dakota. His brand new book, Gridlock. It is a thrilling novel from our friends at Forge Publishing, co-authored by David Hagberg from Sarasota. We said earlier on, it is a page-turner. Indeed, it is. I can personally vouch for that one. We hope that it is available at all the fine bookstores around Florida, Amazon.com, and all those kind of places. If you go in and ask for it, they don't have it, they'll order it for you. You can walk into a bookstore and still do that. You really can. You know,
What's a bookstore, Reagan?
Amazes some people sometimes. But,
you can download it to your Kindle.
Is there a website that goes along with this book, Senator, by any chance?
There's not a specific website for the book, but if people wish to reach me, it's byrondorgan.com, and I'm happy to respond to them.
All right. Let us pause. We'll resume our conversation on the Florida Roundtable following these messages. We're back. You're listening to the Florida Roundtable, the service of Florida's Talk and Entertainment Networks. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
Our very special guest this day is former Democratic Senator Byron Dorgan of North Dakota. We've been chatting about current events, but mostly about his brand new book called Gridlock. It is a novel from our friends at Forge Publishing. Yes, a novel, but based in truth and possibilities. Boy, it'll open your eyes and raise the hair on the back of your neck, give you goosebumps, all those kind of things. I have a couple of questions more about the book that I wanted to ask you, Senator. How long did it take you guys to put this together?
It's about a year and a half or so. I mean, it takes a while to write a book, but this was an interesting book and a fun book to write. Can I just tell you a couple stories about cyber terror?
Sure.
You know, let me. One is one of these small, nettlesome stories, and yet it had consequences. A Syrian group hacked into the Associated Press Twitter account about 3 months ago now. And they sent out a tweet that there had been 2 explosions in the White House that morning and that President Obama had been injured. Of course, that was not accurate, but they had hacked into this AP account. And so on the AP tweet, it went out, and within 2 minutes, the stock market had dropped 143 points. Wow. That's just, this is a nettlesome thing about how someone in Syria can hack into a Twitter account and have an impact here. There was one of the world's largest oil companies, Aramco of Saudi Arabia. They shut down work one evening, came back the next morning, and 30,000 desktop computers, the data from those computers had been annihilated by a virus. And in place of all the data was left the image of a burning American flag on all 30,000 of the computer screens. And those 2 examples are examples of what's going on around the world, and our financial institutions are being attacked, the Defense Department, some of it just for spying purposes, some of it to try to get financial opportunities, but there's this other issue which we've written about now, and the issue is using cyber terror as a digital weapon to shut down essential services that can bring a country to its knees. And that's why I say in this new digital age we see a lot of wonderful things that come from it, but there's also some new threats that we haven't even thought much about, let alone taken action to try to protect ourselves from it.
That's a good point. Also, don't forget the Chinese have also been fooling around in that cyber warfare in different ways.
Yeah. Well, they say there's this white building in Shanghai, big white building that's populated by the Chinese military that is engaged full-time in cyber activities. Mostly that's spying, snooping, and so on, but it can easily be converted to doing damage to essential systems.
What are we doing to combat this? Do you know anything that the government, obviously you've been involved in that when you were in office, what are we doing to combat that? Do we have special branches that are handling handling the defense of this type of thing?
We do. I mean, there's a lot of work ongoing to try to provide these protections, but in some cases our systems are not modern new systems that are robust. By the way, our government, there's not a lot of discussion about it, but we actually hire former hackers who have reformed their lives a bit to help us, help our government anticipate where do the attacks come from and how do we provide protections against attacks, cyber terror attacks.
That's a smart idea, actually.
You're absolutely right. I was taken here just a few weeks ago when these hackers actually had a convention, and the head of the NSA, the general, went and addressed them, and it was talking about getting them into our government service. I guess I am getting old.
Well, yeah,
I mean, dumbfounded by that.
Look who the Treasury Secretary is. They're always former Goldman Sachs guys. It's just when you know the darker side, you can fight against it in a way. You have knowledge that some people don't. So that's before you go, one more question. What do you think of the goings on in the Senate right now and in the House? I wanted to get your take. Are you glad to be out?
As I said to you, it was a great privilege to serve. I mean, I was there a long time, but I wanted to do other things. And so it is frustrating to be there without being able to accomplish things. That nothing is happening, largely because the lubrication of democracy has always been, the ability to compromise. You and I might disagree about things, but we sit down with some goodwill and find middle ground. Well, nowadays, compromise is considered a four-letter word, and so nobody wants to compromise. But that's the only way you can really get things done.
Politics, the art of compromise, without a doubt.
Absolutely. And the American people deserve to get the best of what both political parties can offer them rather than the worst of each. And at the moment, nothing is happening.
Yeah.
Correct.
Senator, at the end of the day, the folks pick up your book, Gridlock, this wonderful novel. What are your hopes? What should they take away from reading this book?
Well, they'll have a little more knowledge about the new threats that exist in this digital age. They'll, when they go to a town meeting with a member of Congress, they may ask a question about what's being done. Are you aware of these issues? I just think it's a new day, a new age with some new threats, and this is a thriller that I think people will enjoy reading. But it will also give them some information about what kinds of things exist that could cause some problems for us.
Well, you couldn't have summarized it better, and I endorse that. Having read this, 5 stars from here, Senator. The book.
You're nice to do that.
The book again is Gridlock. It is a novel by Senator Byron L. Dorgan, Democrat from North Dakota. David Hagberg, a resident of the Sarasota area, from Forge Publishing. Available at all the fine bookstores around Florida and Amazon.com, places like that. Pick it up. Give it a good read, Senator. We know how busy you still are. We thank you for all your time this day, and we'd like to invite you to come back and do this again when the next one's ready.
Well, I'd love to, and Reagan and Al, thanks a lot. You make doing this easy. You're good interviewers. Well, I can tell you've had a wealth of experience doing this as well.
Thank you very much, Senator.
Thank you, Senator.
We try.
All right, good to be with you.
Senator Byron Dorgan. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm Al Spry.
We'll be back with some closing thoughts following these messages. This is the Florida Roundtable. I'm Reagan Smith.
And I'm warm and fuzzy, Al Spry. I guess I got a little worked up in that segment earlier about...
Well, that's all right.
The pastor.
Pleasure having Senator Dorgan on with us, and we are looking forward to his next work and having him back again. It's interesting sometimes how former senators and congressmen will open up and share things with you a little bit that maybe you never heard of before.
Excellent, excellent interview, excellent guest. That was, of course, courtesy of you. Very, very nice job.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Good man.
Let's talk about the winners and losers this week in Florida politics. Something we'll start doing, I think, if we can. A little added bonus for you. The winner of the week, Rick Scott. The anti-stand your ground Dream Defenders parked at his office for a month. They finally left. Governor, you can return to the office you avoided from practically the moment the sit-in started, so welcome back. The loser of the week, Mitch Needleman, a Republican former state rep from Melbourne, was arrested last week on bribery and bid tampering charges related to a contract with a scanning company, Blueware, that moved to the Space Coast in 2012 after receiving more than $1.3 million in taxpayer incentives. Quote, a testament to the strength of our business climate and the result of a common vision for economic growth by local, regional business and government partners, Rick Scott said in 2012 of the move by Blue Ware, whose CEO is now wanted for arrest.
Okay. All right. That's a mouthful. Well, but you got it all in there. So,
I did.
All right. It is time for us to say thank you for your time this day. We always invite your comments. Drop us a note. Go to myflanews.com and let us know. And if you got a guest you'd like to hear, we'll try to get them for you. I'm Reagan Smith.
I'm Al Spry.
We'll see you again in 1 week.
You've been listening to Florida Roundtable, a weekly look at issues and problems of concern to Floridians from a state, national, and international perspective. Presented by the Florida News Network with your hosts, Reagan Smith and Al Spry. The views and opinions expressed during the preceding program are solely those of the participants and not necessarily those of this station's ownership, management, or sponsors of FNN. Your views and opinions are welcome. Address your card or letter to Florida Roundtable in care of Reagan Smith, 2500 Maitland Center Parkway, Suite 407, Maitland, Florida, 32751. Or you may email reagansmith@fnnonline.com. Thank you for listening, and please join us again next week for another edition of Florida Roundtable.